Museums Conference. A warm welcome to everyone joining us tonight. For those who may not be familiar with SEMC, we are a regional professional organization representing museums and museum staff in the 12 southeastern states. We have a membership of over 2,000 and continue to grow. SEMC is thrilled to be part of today's program and even more excited that it was developed in continued partnership with the Association of Academic Museums and Galleries. The SEMC AAMG collaboration on Launchpad programs is an example of the power of partnerships, peer-to-peer connection, learning, and camaraderie. I'm so thankful to Alexandra Chamberlain, AAMG's virtual administrator, and Christina DuRocher, AAMG's president, for oversight and collaboration on these sessions. Also, a quick note that registration is now open for AAMG's 2025 conference, which is June 24th to 27th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. SEMC will be opening registration for our 2025 annual meeting in Montgomery, Alabama, which is October 20th to 22nd, very soon. I would also like to acknowledge the sponsors of tonight's program, our fundraising search and Banks Creative, for the significant support they have provided to the Launchpad Series and to make these programs possible and allow us to keep them free for all to attend. Now I'll turn it over to Heather Nowak, SEMC's program administrator, to go over a few housekeeping notes and introduce tonight's speaker.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining today's program. I'm looking forward to learning with you, and before we get started, I'll quickly cover a few housekeeping items. If you need closed captioning, it is available. Simply click the CC button in your Zoom screen and enable the auto transcription feature. You can also download a full transcript of the program today by clicking More at the bottom of your Zoom screen, choose Captions, and then View Full Transcript. The program today will be recorded and emailed to each of you. Since we are in a webinar format today, we do encourage you to utilize the chat to introduce yourself and share your thoughts or ideas. Feel free to ask questions along the way in the Q&A feature, and we will do our very best to get through them by the end of the program. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you about the resume review that will follow this program. We encourage you to take the wonderful information you'll learn today, update your resume, and then participate in the review. The deadline to sign up is April 17th, and by participating, you'll be paired with a seasoned professional who can help you further develop a standout resume, so take advantage of this opportunity. I'll share the link to the sign up in the chat, and you can find out more about the process by visiting the SEMC or AAMG websites. Now, it's my honor to introduce today's presenter. Joining us is David M. Pauley, Principal and Managing Director at our Fundraising Search in Atlanta, Georgia. Dave, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you all for inviting me to be with you today. What I thought might be best is if, before we get into the slides and talk about the resume, I give you a little insight into who I am, why I'm here, and how my experience is applicable to this. So our fundraising search is a full-service fundraising firm. Approximately 60% of our work involves headhunting. That we help organizations figure out how to fund their mission, and that starts with making sure they have the right teams in place. So our organization sources all levels of fundraisers, plus CEOs, executive directors, chief marketing officers, chief development officers, and CFOs. Anyone who touches revenue. I, in particular, am head of the CEO and executive director practice. I am on Act 3 of my career. I had a 25-year career in corporate aviation. Retired in 2011 and decided to go run nonprofits because I thought it was going to be easier. Spent 10 years running nonprofits and then retired again in 2020 with the idea that I was going to teach a little. I'm on the faculty at Georgia State University and work with our Career Advancement Center. And I was going to consult a little. And instead, what happened is uh, Georgia State asked me to step up to a full-time faculty role. At the same time, I decided to buy our fundraising search. So I am the only person in the world dumb enough to retire into two full-time jobs. I'm here because as a headhunter, we interview a lot. I have seen good resumes. I have seen bad resumes. This particular discussion we're going to have today is part of a larger career development seminar that I do for all levels of professional. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do today is we are going to first off talk about the purpose of the resume, and I'm probably going to address it in ways you haven't necessarily uh, heard it discussed before. We're going to talk specifically about how you position and sell yourself in a resume, how you translate that into a way that is compelling, and we're also going to touch on what not to do in a resume. Now, even though I am working off of two screens because of how presenter mode works, I can't actually see the chat. So Heather and Zinni and Alexandra are going to watch the questions, and if something's particularly timely, they'll interrupt me and ask me to address it, or they'll make sure that we address it at the end. Okay, before we get started, also, I do want to touch on one thing, the difference between a resume and a CV, especially because when we talk about museums that are in the academic community, the terms sometimes get used interchangeably, and they are not actually interchangeable. Um, a CV or curriculum vitae is a full history of your academic credentials, and the length of it can be variable, but it's a documentation of the jobs you've had, the duties and responsibilities you've had, and what you've accomplished. A resume, on the other hand, is more concise. It's a picture of your skills and qualifications for a specific position. The length tends to be shorter, dictated by your years of experience. Generally, it is 1 to 2 pages, um, typically front to back. If you're applying for a job and someone asks you for a CV, it's always fair to ask them the question, do you really want a CV or do you want a resume? Most of the time my experience has been is they actually want a resume. Okay, so the starting point, before we get into writing a resume, developing a resume, um, you need to be clear with yourself about why someone wants to hire you. What are you great at? What proves that you are great at something? Pre-work is critically important to understanding yourself before you try to put anything down in paper. There is a lot of noise in the industry about application tracking systems and how um, they automatically rule out qualified candidates before they get there. Let's talk a little bit about the myths of that versus the reality. Application tracking systems, or ATSs, are not actually designed to rule candidates out. They are essentially big electronic filing cabinets. It's a way to keep and manage, for a recruiter to keep and manage documentation through the process. Now, there is a reality though. ATSs can help pull out applications if someone is patently unqualified, if they've applied for the wrong job. Um, and when I refer to patently unqualified, for example, if the position requires a degree and the resume doesn't mention that degree, the ATS will flag it and put it into a separate file to read. But it doesn't automatically just throw resumes out. There are two truths to this, though, that you need to take into consideration. Um, Recruiters do not want to interview every applicant for a job. It is not how we get paid. It's not helpful. Um, Candidly, a recruiter who brags on the number of applicants isn't picking the right thing. When we go out and do a job search, I do CEO searches and executive director searches. So if I'm going out for a CEO or an executive director, and I may get 40, 60, 100 applicants for that job, depending on where it's been advertised. I'm not going to do 40 interviews. Um, the first two, three times that a recruiter looks at a resume, they look at it from a perspective of looking for reasons to rule the candidate out because they're trying to get the slate of candidates down to something that is manageable. Now, that's important to understand that if your resume looks like everybody else's, sounds like everybody else's, it's not necessarily compelling enough to make it through that cut. So, in building a resume, you want to build a resume that the recruiter keeps wanting to come back to. And if you think of a resume as a front and back of a single sheet of paper, your resume needs to catch the recruiter's attention above the fold on the first page. So the intro into the resume needs to address these things. Why does someone want to hire you? What are you great at? What proves that you're great at it? Sadly, that's not how most people write resumes. No one gets, let's be honest, no one gets hired based on their resume. The resume is essentially an advertisement. It's an advertising document. It has one job to get you the interview. All right. It should lead the interviewer to want to recruit you, a recruiter rather to want to interview you. I like to compare it to this is from an old movie, but I always love the ad. Buy Volvos. They're boxies but good. That's what most resumes are. Most resumes um, fall short of selling a recruiter on a candidate to make them want to interview, call you in for a discussion or an interview. All right, so let's start with some of the do's and don'ts, and then we're going to get into a little more detail. First, don't lead at the top of your resume with an objective statement. This is something that academic career counselors coach undergrads to do because most of them don't have work experience. But an objective talks about what you want. My objective is to get a position at a major museum that enables me to do such and such and such and such. The reality is the recruiter, the hiring manager, has a problem. And you need to sell yourself as a solution to that problem. So if a job is out on the market to be filled, the first thing you know is it's already gone through a test. Anytime you have open headcount in an organization has to demonstrate they still need that job. It's a fiduciary responsibility of any organization, especially the finance department, to say, is there a way to do the work without hiring somebody into this job? The reason for that is headcount is expensive. So if you see a job ad, you know immediately they've got a problem. They've got a problem that they want to solve and that they can't solve any other way than filling the job. So rather than leading with an objective statement, you're going to lead with either a profile or a summary. We're going to dig in more into this in a second. But essentially, you want to brand yourself. Why does somebody want to talk to you? Why does somebody want to hire you? A personal brand statement summarizes essentially what you're good at and how an organization, a museum, is going to benefit from hiring you. We'll dig more into that in a second. The second do versus don't. Don't list dozens of duties and responsibilities. If you have a list of duties and responsibilities, that tells the resume reviewer nothing about whether or not you were good at those duties and responsibilities. Especially as you're looking to move up the ladder in your career, executives don't talk about themselves in terms of duties and responsibilities. Entry-level employees do. Executives talk about themselves in terms of accomplishments, especially quantifiable accomplishments. We're going to dig more into this in a second, too. Third thing I want to make sure that you are aware of, once you have had your first job, education should never be at the top of the resume. When education is at the top of the resume, that is shorthand for recruiters. If we see education at the top of the resume, that means you're an entry-level employee. For people just out of undergrad, especially if they went into traditional undergrad programs, didn't work through college, grades and degree are the biggest thing they have to brag about. If academic credentials are at the top of your resume, move them down immediately. Once you have had a job or a professional role, experience needs to be first you have the personal brand statement, then you have the experience level, and you need to talk about your experience. Academics go, to the bottom or close to the bottom, because let's be honest, world's run by C students. Once you're out in the world, your grade point average doesn't make any difference anymore. It's what you actually bring to the organization. And the last thing, and I think this is important, your resume is not a place to be humble. Remember, it's not bragging if you've done it. You want somebody reading your resume to be intrigued by what you've accomplished. Now, I live in the South. There is a lot of emphasis on, oh no, oh dear, you can't talk about yourself. Actually, you can. And people will protest, hey, I was part of a team that did this. Well, what's the role you played on the team? If you led the team, then you should say you led the team. If you are part of a team, but you contributed significantly to it, and the team as a result generated a result, it belongs on your resume. You don't have to get into the detail of, well, I was a part of a team of 5 who did this. It's not a deposition document. It's a marketing document. Okay. So let's start with this idea of your personal brand statement. Your personal brand statement is a opening to the resume that essentially defines what you're going to bring to the table. Instead of calling it a personal brand statement, call it your profile or call it your executive summary or your candidate summary. It's typically going to be 2 to 5 phrases. It can be written in a bulleted form or a brief paragraph. It's going to summarize your skills, your accomplishments, and your knowledge. So over on the right, this is an example um, from a student I was coaching at the university. At the beginning, his opening brand was he had just finished up a data science internship and he talked about what he learned. Okay, that's not bad. But as we really got into what did you do? What did you accomplish? He said, well, I got IBM Watson certified in 8 months, and that normally takes 12. And we got 135% investment returns for a model that I built. All right, that's pretty impressive for an undergrad. I'm going to take us out of the presentation for a second. So part of the pre-work that I mentioned is to get to know yourself. And I think what is especially effective is to do this on a written sheet of paper. I'll explain why in a second. Um, most people, I talk to a lot of people who are contemplating career changes. Most people don't really think about who they are or why someone would want to hire them till they're in their 40s and their 50s. It kind of goes along with the midlife crisis. Most people picked their career path based on advice, at least their initial career path, that based on advice that they got in high school. And that advice was, what are you good at that you can also make money at? Enjoying the work is an important part of making work fulfilling. So as pre-work, I tell candidates as I'm helping them work on where they're going to go to a job, take a blank sheet of paper and divide it into 4 quadrants. At the top of the upper left quadrant, I want you to write, what do I love? At the top of the right quadrant, I want you to write, what am I great at that I also enjoy doing? At the top of the bottom left quadrant, I want you to write, what do I hate? And the top of the bottom right quadrant, I want you to write, what do I suck at that I also have no intention of getting better at? Now, no one's going to see this. You're not writing a resume. You're getting to know yourself. And I learned this when I retired from Delta Airlines. I was working with a career coach. I had the opportunity. It's exactly, Alexandra. It's just like a SWOT analysis. The I had the opportunity to totally reinvent myself. I was 46 when I retired from Delta, um, and I had made up my mind to go do something besides aviation. Working with my career coach, I'm adapting this exercise from what she did. She said, start with what you love. Just write down the things you love. Don't try to be politically correct or career based. If you love vodka, put down vodka. Coincidentally, I do like vodka. I put down things like, I love travel. I love teaching. I love attention. I love egg rolls. I love good wines. Filled up a page of the things I love. The top of the right-hand side, what are the things I'm great at that I also enjoy doing? There's 2 purposes for this. First of all, that quadrant is actually going to help you write your resume. The left-hand quadrant, what do I love, helps you pick which organizations you want to look at. The right-hand side helps you pick what jobs do I want with those in those organizations, and how do I position myself. So, it took me a long time, probably into my 40s, to realize you can be good at something, really good at something, and still not enjoy it. My undergrad is in aerospace engineering, with a minor in computer science. I have mad coding skills. I'm also an extreme extrovert. So sitting in a cubicle, writing and debugging code is my personal hell. So even though I have great coding skills, they're nowhere on my resume. I don't talk about it because I don't want to go into jobs that involve coding. The bottom left-hand quadrant, what do I hate? I know hate is a controversial word. I pick it very deliberately. There are things that all of us have visceral reactions to. I hate working for micromanagers. I hate working for control freaks. I hate working with people who don't have a sense of humor. That bottom left-hand quadrant helps you in an interview understand whether or not it's going to be an organization that you want to work for. And that bottom right-hand quadrant, what do I suck at that I also have no intention of getting better at? That helps you roll out jobs and applications. I will tell you my experience in my career, I have learned, I'm confident in my ability to make money. What I am not confident in is my ability to make time. No one has ever taught me the recipe to make more time. and I've become much more judicious and guarded about my time. And if a job requires me to learn to do something that I have no intention of learning how to do, that's not a job I want to market myself for. Okay, so your pre-work for your resume is to get to know yourself. Let's go back into the presentation. Okay, so this is lifted from my resume. Your personal brand statement should speak to what you're good at that you also enjoy doing and what you can prove. So this is my personal brand statement from my resume. The um, my career has essentially always been um, fixing broken organizations and building new ones from scratch. I'm really good at making money. I'm really good at hitting revenue targets. I'm really good at fixing organizations, and it's what I enjoy doing. I've been a CEO 5 times, three for-profit, two not-for-profit, and so I saw myself as somebody who builds new organizations and fixes broken ones. Now, there's some key elements to this. I'm a data-driven business strategist. Strategy is what I do. I have a track record of successful accomplishments in terms of global business restructurings, building new organizations, mergers and acquisitions. I really enjoy leading. I think I'm a pretty good leader. I have built a lot of really strong, diverse teams along the path of my career, all of whom have always been able to achieve their operational and financial goals. I've got really broad cross-functional experience. I have worked in music, I've worked in arts, I've worked in the environment, I've worked in aviation, obviously, and both working for-profit and not-for-profit enterprises. And I teach. I'm a confident communicator. I educate. I help mentor managers to greatness. Now, that can sound a little arrogant, and that's not how I introduce myself to people. I don't walk up and say, Dave, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm an effective builder and implementer. You've lost them already. But I do, it is core to talking about and positioning who I am. That brand statement reflects the value I bring to organizations. Now, if an organization is not looking for somebody who fixes, builds, turns around, that's not a job I want to do. They're going to rule me out based on this. And I've had people do that. I've had people say, hey, loved your resume. You're a turnaround guy. We're not looking for a turnaround. We're looking for somebody to just keep the lights on. Like, thank you very much. That's not my job. We'll keep going. Um, it's really important if you don't want to do it, don't include it in your resume, even if you are good at it. Okay, let's talk about a couple of key elements. I'm just recapping something I've talked about so far. Don't talk about yourself in terms of duties and responsibilities. It tells the reader nothing about whether you were good at them or not. Instead, talk about yourself in terms of accomplishments. And again, this is important. It's not bragging if you've done it. This is not a place to be humble. Quantifiable results sell in a resume. So I have here a role for chief curator. Most resumes are going to list duties and responsibilities. Inspect and monitor the physical care of the museum collections, assist as necessary with exhibitions and storage, oversee and be responsible for research art. You guys have seen these job descriptions. This tells me nothing about whether or not you were good at them. Instead, go back to our 4-quadrant exercise on that sheet of paper. On that upper right-hand corner, as you identify the things that you're really good at, that you enjoy doing, the next step is then what proves it. This is vital for your resume. It's also vital for your interview strategy. If you say that I am really good at creating exhibitions, great. I believe you. What proves it? What are the quantifiable results that you can generate? Now, usually candidates at this point will protest and say, I don't know what the quantifiable results were, or I can't prove it. I think it's this. You know, first of all, your resume is not going to get audited. Get as close as you can to quantifiable results. If you've done something and it had a great impact, start by asking people, what do we know quantifiable, how we measure it? Personally, I think if you know this has to go on your resume, it changes about how you think about your the quality of your work and how you quantify the accomplishments. You should always be documenting what did I accomplish. In fact, best practice for this, I rewrite my resume every New Year's Day. On New Year's Day, there's three things I do. I take down the Christmas decorations, I change all the batteries in the smoke detectors, and I update my resume. And it's taking a moment to think, what did I accomplish? How did we quantify it? What proves that I did something well is a really useful exercise for you. Actually, it's also good for your ego, but also then helps you translate that into your resume. All right. Third thing I think that's important. People are interested in you beyond just the work. Hobbies, sports, interesting facts create opportunities to connect with an interviewer. Recruiters are people. We do this for a living. We talk to people for a living. It can be really boring. Um, and yet, a resume that talks about or captures something that's interesting about you can make a recruiter want to speak to you. On my resume, um, well, before I tell you about my resume, there was a period in my career after I got out of grad school. I spent about 5 years in my spare time working as a stand-up comic. The last bullet point on the back page of my resume mentions that I have experience working as a stand-up comic. Every interview that I have ever gone on, that's the first thing the recruiter wants to talk about. Tell me about your time working as a stand-up comic. Right? Anything that can make you interesting, approachable, connectable, um, will help the recruiter keep putting you in that stack of somebody I want to continue to talk to. All right, so let's actually talk about one thing in particular, the idea of whether or not you should customize your resume for every single job and every single job description. Let's start with the job description. I'm going to answer that question, but it's a relatively long answer. First of all, um, every job description out in the world basically sucks. I don't believe a new job description has been written since 1988. People just call their friends and say, "Hey, Zinnia, do you have a job description for a curator?" And Zinnia says, "Yes, let me email it to you." All right. On the job description, so I'll take this new job description that Zinnia has sent me, and yeah, everything looks fine. I just need to add these 5 bullets, and those 5 bullets I'm gonna put at the top. Job description has duties and responsibilities include, and there are 30 bullets listed. I guarantee you the most important things in that job description are in the first 5 bullets. Right? So before you apply for the job, you've got to look and say, do I have these most important things that they are looking for? If you do, good. Does your resume speak to that? But the other element to understand with this is the value of a cover letter. Lots of people will tell you no one reads cover letters anymore. As recruiters, I will tell you we have put people into searches who have written a really great cover letter, even when their resume hasn't justified it. The more that so if you look at the job description, those first 5 bullets, and you say, you know what, I got the first 3, I can touch on the first 4, I don't have the 5th one. Your cover letter is where you explain that. Your cover letter lets you explain gaps in your resume, questions people may have. Um, a better cover letter that speaks to the job description and the role and explains things beyond your resume is more valuable than trying to rewrite your resume for every single job that you apply for. All right, so you want to customize the application letter and to the degree necessary the resume to specifically speak to the specific application. You know, you can, if you have a really good profile statement and your application letter, you don't have to change anything else in the resume. That, you know, those are the places where you have the greatest opportunity to capture the reviewer's attention. Something that's really critical, your LinkedIn profile needs to match your resume. Recruiters, like fundraisers, are great cyber stalkers. Right? If your LinkedIn profile is not fully up to date, captures everything that's on your resume, um, the recruiter is likely going to pass you over for candidates that where everything lines up. Again, the most important elements are going to be in the first 3 to 5 bullets of the job description. Absolutely be aware of cut and paste. Wrong company names, wrong job details, etc., will kill the resume. I have had application letters come to me and say, I'll give you an example. I just recently did the search for a CEO of a Habitat for Humanity chapter. And someone sent me an application letter saying, I'm applying for the Chief Development Officer of the Atlanta Humane Society. And I'm like, well, that's great. I'm not doing the search for that job, so you made this easy for me to rule out. I have also had people send me cover letters addressed to Ms. David Pauley and say, Dear Ms. Pauley, and you know, I'm not making any presumptions. David's a fairly very straightforward name. Plus, if you look me up on LinkedIn, I list my pronouns. Those kind of things will kill an application, kill a resume. You also want to pay attention to branding details for the company you're applying to. So, for example, um, Delta Airlines, my former employer, spells its name as 3 words: Delta Airlines. It's the only airline in the world where that breaks air and lines, but it does. If an applicant, when I was at Delta, if an applicant sent me a application letter or resume where they had written Delta Airlines as 2 words, that was a meaning warning sign to me that they didn't have the attention to detail I was probably looking for, especially if it was an internal candidate. If an internal candidate applied for the job and wrote Delta Airlines as 2 words, if you don't know how to represent the name of your company, you're probably not going to be happy working for me. At the end of the day, your application, your cover letter, your resume have to speak to the job and the company as it's advertised. Here's some common mistakes to avoid. First off, small fonts and other graphic devices in your resume that make the document hard to read. The more people are getting accustomed to working on their phones, on their digital devices, they don't think to necessarily check the font. Um, I just had a monumental birthday. If someone sends me a document in 8-point font, I'm not going to blow it up to read it. You want to make sure your document is easy to read. Second, mistake to avoid is inconsistent voice. That means, you know, if you're speaking to things in phrases, always speak to them in terms of phrases. Be clear about when you're using tenses, when you're talking. You want to make sure that the grammar and readability of the document is consistent all the way through it. Inconsistent grammar and spelling errors obviously are a killer. There's no excuse for it in a world where every word processor has a grammar and a spell checker to it. I don't believe I have to tell people this, but I see this a couple times every year. Make sure you're applying to you're sent that what you're sending is the right application for the right job. Generally speaking, your resume should not be more than 2 pages, um, no matter how many jobs you've had. On that work topic, jobs, a resume doesn't have to speak to every job you've ever had in your career. If you are a more senior candidate, you only have to speak to the last 10 years of your career, unless you want to. Um, but even with a really detailed career, I am now 35 years, 38 years into my career. Um, I've had numerous jobs. I had 18 positions at Delta Airlines. I can fit my resume on the front and back of a single sheet of paper. So it is possible. It just requires some editing. If you have quantifiable results, always include them. Not including quantifiable results reduces the perception of your education, I mean, your executive caliber. And again, just to reiterate, don't never lead with education at the top of your resume when you have work experience. Okay. Quick thing, I'll leave this up for a second, and I want to touch on two other questions that we get. But the QR code that is on the screen right now, and that's my email address. The QR code will take you to our website. The two things I want to address, first of all, if you are a more senior candidate, again, you don't have to speak to anything more than 10 years of your career. Um, some candidates want to, some candidates don't. But there is a question of implicit bias. So for older candidates, your resume, actually, well, for any candidate, no matter what your age, your resume should not include dates of your education. Don't include the date that you got your college degree. Don't include the date you got any degree that you're putting on there, because it can play into unconscious bias. Similarly, we tell candidates or we recommend to candidates don't put pictures on the resume. While it looks really good and while it matches LinkedIn, it can also play into implicit bias, or I mean unconscious bias rather, which works against you. You want your resume to talk about you in terms of qualifications and what you bring to the job as a solution to the problem. Okay, let me stop the share there. Um, what questions you all have? What do you want to know? And I hope this is being helpful.
Hey, Dave. This has
Hey,
been great so far. Thank you so much. We do have a question from Chris. It says, especially with the focus on a resume as a marketing piece, I'm wondering if we should be using colorful resumes or the standard black and white.
it's a great question, Chris. California, most people are reviewing resumes online. I would tell you add things only if they help sell you. Let me use a PowerPoint as an example. There should never be a graphic in a PowerPoint that does not speak to the slide. Otherwise, it's just a distraction. Same thing with your resume. If your resume has multiple fonts, multiple colors, that actually can make it hard to read. So only use marketing motifs judiciously if they actually help you sell yourself. If not, this is a case where less is more.
All right. Kyle Briner, she says she would love to see your two-page resume. Uh, Dana, she also has a question. Should internship experiences go under education or work history? It's a great question.
That's a really great question. Let's start with how valuable was the internship? Generally speaking, internships are experience, especially if you accomplish something. If it's the only professional background you have, put it under experience. Um, the only time I would put it under education is if it was an unpaid internship. Um, if it was a bad internship, you still want to capture it because it may help sell you. Experience is always going to help sell you. But if it was unpaid, if it was a bad experience, or if it's totally outside the field that you're applying for, that you've decided that you're committed to a career as a museum professional, and you did this one internship as a in-house sales associate. It's worth noting, but it's not germane to the experience that's going to sell you. Really great question.
Absolutely. Okay, Hannah, she has an interesting question. Okay, so if you're a recent graduate, what are the most important things to address in a resume?
Ah, so any professional experience that you've got, and any accomplishments and the dates that were there. Go back up to the profile though, even if you're a recent graduate. The advantage of the Foursquare exercise is to sell yourself as a solution. So, Hannah, what are the things that you think you do well that if someone asks you about in an interview, you think you can sell yourself on? Those are the most important things to address. I have, over the course of my career, um, I've managed a lot of people. I'm probably right at about 1,200 unique employees over the course of my career. When I was hiring, and more importantly, when I was managing managers, I find that hiring managers fall into two buckets. Bucket A, the manager that is searching for the perfect candidate and will keep the job open until they can find the perfect candidate. I hate that manager. I have actually, I have taken jobs away from managers who's worked for me. If they've held the job open for 9 months while they look for the perfect candidate, I'm like, you've proven to me you don't need that job. And take that headcount and employ it to somebody else. Candidly, also, I don't think that's a manager you want to work for because I have found they have other problems. The second manager is the manager I believe I am, and the manager I really love having work for me, is I will get as close as I can in terms of technical skills, but I will hire for attitude. And I have turned down candidates that have had better technical skills for candidates that have convinced me they have the right attitude and approach because I can teach technical skills. Technical skills are the easiest thing to teach. Attitude and enthusiasm are much harder. So, in terms of positioning yourself in your resume, use that personal brand statement, your profile, your summary, to really describe what you bring to an organization that the hiring manager is going to want. How are you a solution to their problem or what you believe their problem is?
So, all right, Jeanette has an interesting question too about PDFs. Is it true that PDF resumes are not searchable and therefore just thrown out?
Nope, it's not true. That PDFs work better for two reasons. First of all, they're easier to store. And second, they are searchable. The applicant tracking system that we use actually prefers PDFs. If you upload a PDF and I pull up your application, it appears right on my screen. If you upload it as a Word file, first of all, it's tamperable. And second, our system won't display it. I actually have to go through the extra step of downloading the document and then opening it in Word. And like anybody else, I'm pressed for time. So PDFs are searchable, and most of the systems actually kind of that I've seen actually prefer them.
Great. Okay, Sarah, she has a question. It says, I sometimes find as a generalist that it's difficult to sell myself in a resume to organizations looking for people with specialized experience or education. How do I tailor my resume to make my wide-ranging career seems valuable for specialized jobs?
So I am possibly the most generalist executive you have ever met. Um, I have I have worked or led finance people and marketing people and uh, doctors and lawyers and finance analysts and symphony musicians and opera singers. By the way, I have a really high tolerance for arrogance. The thing about being a generalist is it is actually a benefit. This is one of the places, though, that nonprofit struggles. Many nonprofits still make the mistake of believing that technical proficiency is a requirement for executive leadership. When I came from corporate into nonprofit, I was told I was never going to run a symphony orchestra because I was not a musician. I was never going to run a theater company because I was not a director. I was never going to run a social services organization because I was not a licensed therapist. By the way, they were wrong on all those fronts. But here's the thing, for profit got over that 60 years ago. Pilots don't run airlines, doctors don't run hospitals, lawyers, if they're honest with themselves, don't run their law firms. All right. So generalist is actually an asset. Now, the starting point for that is to talk about yourself in terms of accomplishments. I will put this out there, Heather. I'll send you my resume if they want to see it, because one thing I can tell you, doing this for a living, I've got a good resume. The the thing about how we talk about ourselves, we talk about ourselves in terms of accomplishments. So um, you'll see on my resume, you know, had this job, accomplished this, accomplished this, accomplished this, accomplished this. There's nothing in there about how I did it. You know, the implication is, look at this. I turned around this organization and got it break even to 6 months and profitability in 9. You want to know how I did it? Invite me into the interview. So the best and broadest way is to talk about yourself in terms of accomplishments, but also um, go through the four square exercise to get clearer on the jobs you want to apply to. I see this a lot, especially with undergrads. They don't know what they want to do, so they try to build a resume where they can use to apply to every single thing. That doesn't work. But if you come back to on the resume, you talk about yourself in terms of accomplishments, and on the first 5 bullets in the job description, if you got things that actually specifically address that, leverage the cover letter. Leverage the cover letter more than the resume and say, hey, you're looking for somebody who's got data management experience. This is what I did for the museum I worked for and how I could apply it here. If you submit a cover letter, the cover letter will get read, and you can pre-position your resume. So, and you can even say, my resume looks like a generalist because I am, but this is what I've done that you're looking for and how I can help your problem, help you solve your problem.
All right. Okay. We have another question from Chris. If you've worked many projects, i.e., short-term work, they take up a lot of space on a resume and are, perhaps going into 3 pages rather than 2. How do you kind of, make it a little more concise to keep it to a 2-page doc?
Sure. So one of the things I have had when I was at Delta, I had 18 titles over 23 years. I talk about the ones that where I had the best accomplishments and or the best title, and the rest of them I've just had. Also has experience doing these things, and they're listed in bullets. Um, the thing now, only spill to a 3rd page if you absolutely have to, and only spill the unimportant stuff. Your work experience and education have to fit on 2 pages. Um, I had somebody apply for a CEO job I was looking for last year, and they submitted an 18-page resume. And after the 3rd page, I read it just out of morbid curiosity to see what all was in there. And like, there's no chance in hell I was going to interview them. It was like, it's like I printed it out and took it to school and said, "Don't be this person." But um, they and the if you have multiple projects and some of them, let's say you're looking for jobs in one of two or three fields, build three resumes and list all the projects, but customize to focus and highlight on the ones that are most important. And probably you want to put a little more attention up front in your profile to your skills and capabilities so that people can zero in on them in the resume as you're talking about yourself.
Okay, perfect. All right, Hannah's back again. What if your resume doesn't meet the criteria for the job you want to apply for? For example, freelancing. How would you kind of, build your resume around that?
Oh, I think so I'm taking this, Anna, to mean that you're a freelancer or have been a freelancer and that you're looking for a job that is more in the field you're looking for. Again, cover letter is going to help you do that. In particular to how you build it. Think about yourself. There is a form of resume. It's less commonly used, but it's called a skills-based resume, where you still have the profile at the top, but then you list the skills and capabilities that you've built as a freelancer, and then you put the experience underneath that. That resume, if it's well crafted enough, can get over the fact that you're not coming from a position that that y- that doesn't directly map to the position you're looking for. The one thing I will tell you though is also be a little realistic, that when I get applications for CEOs or executive directors, I get a lot of resumes from wait staff, and I'm sure they're lovely people. I'm not going to take the time to interview the cashier at Buc-ee's for a CEO of Habitat. So be a little realistic in terms of also with the job you're looking for as you're applying to it. Isn't it?
I'm sorry. I know that, and take the other question in the Q&A first, and I'll leave mine for
Okay.
the end. But you know
Okay.
that like I have questions too.
Yeah, the conversation's so good. So we have like two more, and I think you could be really quick with these, Dave, and then
Okay.
we'll keep going. So really quick, Julie wants to know how long should a cover letter be? And then Chris says, besides experience and education, what are the most have sections? So
Sure.
cover letter, length, and then most have sections.
Sure. Okay. So cover letter, usually minimum of three, maximum of five paragraphs. Paragraph one, I'm applying for this. You're looking for this. I see this. This is who I am. Paragraph two, you're looking for this. This is what I got. You're looking for this. This is what I've got. You're looking through this. This is what I've got. If you've got more, you can spill to two more paragraphs. But a concise cover letter, all you got to do is say, you're looking for this, and this is what I'm bringing to it. Last paragraph, this is how you get in touch with me. Would love to talk to you. If you're comfortable with it, I will follow up with you on this date if I've not heard from you there. Critical sections other than experience and education. Anything else that's applicable. So, for example, because of the strange life I have had, I have been on corporate and nonprofit boards of directors literally since I was 17 years old. So I have a section that I call other professional experience. It lists the boards that I've been on. It lists jobs that I've had, side hustles that I've had. Um, it lists being a stand-up comic. Um, all of those are in there. You should have a section on skills and competencies. If you're really good, if you are really good you're a great curator, but you know what? You also got really killer Python skills or really good killer Canvas skills. Put that on there. That helps sell you. And then so other professional experience, and then anything that makes you stand out. Have you got publications? Have you got presentations? Have you done something? Have you got awards or recognitions? Anything those are the things that are perfect for the second page.
Dania, do you want to?
Was there one more that just came in?
Oh, yes. So Dana, these are also good. This is great. Do you offer webinars on do's and don'ts of interviewing? So
I do.
what's written
Oh,
on your
interviewing,
resume?
yes.
Yeah. So what comes out, like you have this written part, but how do you interview it?
I do. Um, I'll give you one bit of advice, but this is a segment. This is the middle segment of like a 3 hour seminar I do on finding the job for you. The one thing I will tell you about interviewing, and it's probably the best piece of advice I can give you, most people approach interviews wrong because they approach it like it's a test at school. I'm going to be asked a bunch of questions and I got to know the answer or I've got to guess at it. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Never approach an interview like a test at school. Approach it like it's a blind date. On a blind date, the other person's trying to figure out, do I want to go on another date with you? You should also be doing the same thing with them. So take the pressure off yourself. Go in and, on a blind date, everyone is the best version of themselves to begin with. Yeah, this is the beta version. This is who Dave is going to grow into at some point. But, on a blind date, they're asking you questions, and if you take that pressure off yourself, like they want to get to know me more, be conversational, be able to talk it to yourself. By the same thing, the questions you should take in there should reflect the things that you're really looking for in an organization. So, but yes, I do that. I do offer another webinar on that or seminar.
Well, that sort of leads into, I don't want to be the final word here, but I'm just, as someone who is kind of later in their career, this is an interview question though, and it is sort of a recruiter type of thing because, I have, and I'm saying, well, I don't want to be like just me, but let's say your resume has a certain experience level and maybe you've managed a budget that's $500,000, but it's not $5 million. And maybe you fundraise, but you've never led a capital campaign. And like, but you could do it. I mean, so
Hmm.
this is like bridging that gap between, and I have I'm not looking for a job right now. Don't panic anybody. I'm just saying, like, I've had conversations in the past where I'm like, I can't make up experience I don't have. I guess this is more of like my resume indicates one thing, and then you're in an interview situation. Is that just to like, you got to sell it like hard and
Well, it's a sell, but it's also so first off, it's both an opportunity and a warning. So let me give you an example. I'm going to come out from the opposite experience as an example. People always look at my resume and said, "You had like 200 people working for you at Delta. We only have 50 people in this
okay,
museum.
sure.
How are you going to be able to work in this environment?" I
Yes.
come back to it is this, I've led an organization as large as 206 countries and as small as two. It's the same principles. It's the same principle to manage an organization of 200 people as it is of two. The reality is no matter how big your organization is, the work is going to expand past what you're staffed to do. So it's the same management principles. The same thing with budget. It's the same amount, the same principles and work to manage a $1.6 billion dollar budget as it is to manage a $500,000 budget.
I think so too, but it's just interesting to me that I think this could go off in 100 different directions because it's sort of now then it becomes about the search committee and like what are they actually looking
Yeah.
for? And that's I don't want to devolve this into like something
No,
totally crazy, but
but you're absolutely right. But it can be a warning sign to you if it's organization. If they don't get that, that may be an
yeah.
organization you don't want to work for. I'll give you an example. I had decided to retire from Delta, but I hadn't left yet. I was recruited to become a CFO of another organization, and I've got finance work in my background, and I wasn't dying to be a CFO, but it's like, you know, got bills, got to pay something. So I went on the interview, first interview, second interview, made it all the way to the interview with the CEO. And we're about 5 minutes into the interview, and points out and says, "I see you also, um, have taught at Georgia State at this time for about 12 years, 14 years. I said, yeah, it's my side hustle. I do it on Monday evenings at 7:30. It's something I've just always done. And it helped me as a manager to teach management. And he said, well, if you get this job, you're going to have to give that up. I said, why? He said, because I need to know you're available to me whenever I need you, however I need you, for as long as I need you. I said, great, thanks. And I got up, took my portfolio, put it back in my briefcase, and held out my hand to shake it. And he's like, where are you going? And I said, I'm not your boy. I don't want to work here. And he started to yell at me. And I'm like, okay, you're not going to shake my hand, fine. Left, said, have a great day, left to go out. He followed me to my car, yelling at me. And I put my briefcase in the car, and he's still yelling at me. I finally turned around and said, if you think you're recruiting me, you're wrong. And I got in my Jeep and drove off, and I watched him in the rearview mirror, stomping around the parking lot screaming. Like, dodged that bullet. Yeah, remember that the reason we teach management is there's a lot more bad managers and leaders out there in the world than there are good ones. And so there's a lot of truth, the old saying, God never closes a door without opening a window. Sometimes she also shoves your ass through it.
Well, and I think in these Launchpad programs in the past, we sort of talked about the job descriptions and reading between the lines and trying to understand like what are they actually looking for? And that's sometimes you don't know that until you're actually in the interview situation. So that could be a next program, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, it's never been easier to network for a job, and
I agree.
sometimes, there was a CEO job I applied for, and I was going to be the third CEO, in 5 years, or fourth, I'm sorry, fourth CEO in 5 years. And I reached out to the other three, and none of them would return my calls. And I got in the interview and saw how bad the board was, and I'm like, oh, they didn't call me back because they can't. Yeah, they have signed an exit package that says they cannot talk about the job. Dodge that bullet too.
Well, and I know we're past time, so we should probably wrap up, but I'm just thinking about networking too. And, I know there's a lot of students on this call who are affiliated either with SEMC or AAMG or just however you got here. But you now have a group of people on this call. Our emails are readily available everywhere. And I always tell people if you are applying for a job, especially at a museum, like email me. The chances are I'm not gonna necessarily say I know somebody there, but I probably know something about the organization or can give a tip or trick of, oh, well, this is what I do know about it. So that the networking, it goes, it's a little beyond the comfort level. But it's okay to send an
Mhm.
email and say, hey, can you help me?
What's the worst that can? First of all, despite how it seems like, pardon how I say this, despite how it seems on social media, there are far fewer assholes in the world than there appears.
I agree.
Most people want to be helpful. And what's the worst that can happen? I tell people, call somebody and it's like, they might get mad. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They're not going to drive by the house and burn it down or kill the cat. The worst that's going to happen is that a friend you don't currently have continues to not be your friend. And um, on the other hand, you miss 100% of the
Yeah.
pitches you don't swing at. So
And
it,
sending an email or a message on LinkedIn or whatnot. I mean, I have graduate students too, and I've talked to them about this. I'm like, it's okay. We just actually did an exercise in my class. We called it love letters. And I asked them to find one person who they admire in the field and just send them an email and say, I just want you to know that I admire what you do or I'm inspired by it and not ask them for anything. Just about all of them got responses back. I mean, it was just sort of getting over that. I'm
mhm.
sorry, and we're like having this conversation now, but I feel like this is important for especially younger those of you who are just entering the field. Like we're pretty easy. Like we want to help you. Like we want you to succeed, and there's a lot of pathways in, but
Well, you
networking is
never know.
really
We might
important.
want to hire you.
We may not hire, yeah. And I will tell you too that I mean, I've heard Dave do this resume thing before, and my resume for the last 20 years has had my education right at the top. And he just in January he did this for a program we did, and I've switched it. So my education now, and it's, I'm a creature of habit at this point, but I listen.
Okay. You
Experience
know,
first.
experience first.
It's important.
I hope you all found this helpful.
Yeah, it was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, Dave shared his contact information, but we'll be more than happy to get you in touch with Dave, or we'll share the recording and any resources along with the recording when we'll just send it in an email. So we'll make sure that you have all the contact information again. So thank you all so much for coming. It's been great, Dave. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I really appreciate you including me. Heather, I'll shoot you my resume. And yeah, I'd appreciate if you all didn't socialize it and put it out on the internet because I'm not looking for a job, but you can use it as a model.
Very good. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all.
Good night,
Take care.
everybody.
All
This is
right.
fun.
Thanks all.